mission of the 30th of March, 1944. This was the first time we'd had our strength renewed since we got our P-38s back. We'd been forced to fly P-47 Thunderbolts for the prior few weeks, just due to shortages and the tremendous amount of battle damage we'd taken as we took Rabaul. Anyway, things were looking good. We were strong. We were in good spirits, and we had a good battle plan. The Japanese we knew were expecting us up at Aitape, and we were directed to just bypass Aitape and wallop them over at Hollandia. It was exciting. All those B-24s, I could see them assembled off to the left and queuing up behind me. My P-38 was purring along, everything brand new. It's just indescribable, the feeling of power and elation you get when you got hundreds of guys totally dedicated to a mission, and the nation behind you and the best equipment. We were tired, no doubt about it, and there were only a few of us. But we knew from recent experience at Rabaul that the Japanese were in a lot worse shape than we were, and we had every hope of catching them by surprise. As I took off, I looked around me and saw this tremendous armada forming up. P-38s ahead of me. I was the last one. And about 80 B-24s, just all loaded up with bombs. I'll tell you, it was exciting. I could see the group up ahead of me and climb to meet them. It was a long ride to the battle area, but once we got there, I'll tell you, things started happening fast. About 100 miles into the mission, I knew I'd used up most of the fuel in my auxiliary drop tanks. I got confirmation we were close when flight lead told me to go ahead and pop those drop tanks. So, of course I did. And looking around me, I could see one group of P-38s, 3 o'clock low, and I was ahead of the other two groups. I wanted to get back with them, so I swung back. I was really supposed to be closer into that second group up high. So I made a lazy kind of a climbing loop, got in behind them, looking around all the time, trying to see, you're there in enemy territory, you don't know if you're going to get bounced. Everybody's eyes were swinging all around looking for somebody, especially you'd look above you and up toward the sun to see if they're trying to catch you blindsided. Nothing. It was all clear. We were all hoping, my heart was pounding as I hoped that we would catch these guys by surprise. Turned out that's the way it happened, but of course we didn't know that at the time. Checked my instruments. I could see we were cruising along at the designated altitude, and again, my airplane was running great. Then we got the word that flight lead had spotted a bandit straight ahead of us, a group of bandits down ahead of us low, and then there was another group at our own altitude straight ahead as we turned toward the Hollandia airfield.
4 bandits just off the 12 o'clock.
Hollandia airfield, 11 o'clock low.
A lot of radio chatter, and I could just make out this group of 4 bandits off in the distance, straight ahead of me. Lead ordered me to pop up and hit them from above, and the rest of the guys were going to swing around and hit them from the side. I like that. I like the high yo-yo lead turn. So here I could see these 4 Japanese radial engine aircraft. Turned out they were Oscars. We thought they might be Zeeks at the time, but they were Oscars. So I popped up and rolled over so I could see them off my right wing. I also saw a group of Tonys down below, and the lower P-38s went after them. So I popped up above these guys and leaned way forward over my gun sight, and I could see all 4 of them, just really pretty airplanes. I picked out the second one and hit him, and it hit him hard. Pieces of his airplane actually broke off and hit my P-38, and looking behind I could see he bailed out. It was kind of surprising to know these guys were carrying parachutes, but they had started with parachutes by this time. These were young, inexperienced Japanese pilots, and the guy bailed out. I had learned by experience that with a heavy fighter like the P-38,
we're right on course. I still will be entering the target area in about 1 minute.
It was usually best to zoom up above my targets after each pass. I could climb better than they could, and I could get up to where they really couldn't hit me. So I zoomed up, then dropped back down on him for another pass, and as I approached, I saw two of those guys.
Okay, everybody, arm your guns, set up your gun sights, and spread into combat formation.
Two of them
Keep your eyes
peeled up.
peeled. Haul out those guns.
Two of them peeled up with a maneuver I couldn't follow, but one of them just kept on going. So I decided to follow the guy that was just flying straight. And, I don't know if he was afraid or he didn't see me coming, but I shot him down from behind. He didn't give me real trouble. Then looking behind me, I could see the two guys that had looped back. I was going fast enough that I never was really in any danger that they could catch me. So I looped back up again, set up another pass.
Bomber leader to escort.
The P-38 with its wonderful counter-rotating propellers can just zoom straight up, almost it seemed like forever, and I was easily able to just get above these guys, just hanging on my props above them, and then drop back down for another pass. These guys weren't very good. I think, their experienced pilots were either not around or most of them had been killed up at Rabaul already. So I made one pass on a guy, and I could see strikes on the back of his airplane, and as I zoomed past, I was headed up, looked behind me, and I saw him bail.
Groups and heavies back at 6 o'clock.
Back up above, set up for another pass. Got radio chatter indicating that the heavies were entering the area, and I was looking around for them but hadn't seen them yet. I did see the airfield. The target airfield was down there, and we were clearly near that. These enemy fighters we were engaging were just, I guess, doing a combat air patrol, and happened to get unlucky and ran into us. Saw another one, came after him, real high-speed approach, and we had a near head-on, and I punctured his wing. I could see a wisp of some kind of liquid venting out of his wing afterwards. He was obviously flying with wing damage, but he didn't go down, kept on going. In fact, this guy gave me a lot of trouble. He stayed in the fight for a long time. I zoomed up for another pass, and he was easy to see at this point because of all that trail of smoke or something streaming out of his wing. Went back after him for another pass. I was getting a little nervous because I knew the bombers were going to get in the area soon, and I wanted to dispatch this guy before the bombers got to the area. I didn't want him up there, harassing the bombers while they were making their drop. So I kept the pressure on him, but he was better than the others. He was good, and he was pretty aggressive. I swung around, kept a wary eye on the airfield down there too, because I didn't want to be a target for all the anti-aircraft fire that ought to be fired.
If any of you guys are still lugging drop tanks, it's time to get rid of them.
He came after me again. That little lightweight airplane he's flying can turn pretty sharp, and he pulled inside me where I couldn't follow him. But I was above him, went up where he couldn't go, made another pass. I could hear my stall warning indicator coming after me, and my engine had been laboring pretty hard. I'd been hitting it with war emergency power, and I had to start letting it cool down a little. And things were getting hot and heavy here. I was looking behind me. I could still see him back there. Still looking around, not seeing the bomber stream yet, but from my map and just looking around, knew they had to be coming in. I could hear radio chatter. They were saying they were in the area someplace. So I kept looking around. My buddies were down lower, and they were having pretty good success. The Tonys got cut up pretty badly, and I know that a lot of my buddies got victories or probables this engagement. As I was doing all this, my buddy Jay Robbins actually shot down one Oscar, damaged another, and got a victory over a Tony also down below. He had a real good time. Most of the enemy activity I could see was actually guys hanging in parachutes. I could see P-38s below me, and then I spotted the bomber stream coming up in the distance above and ahead of me. I was still troubled by that Oscar that had been giving me so much trouble. He was still streaming that vent of steam or fuel leaking from his wing, so he wasn't difficult to see. But he was still aggressive, and at this point I was hoping he'd come after me and not after those bombers. They were still a little above him, and so I let him fly beneath them on one pass and then decided to come back on him, but I was horrified to see him turning toward the bombers, then relieved when he decided to come after me instead. So I pulled into him, tried to lift my nose to get him going, but went into buffet, couldn't quite make the turn. So we went after each other.
Bomber leader to
swinging
bombers.
around and around and
This is
around.
the drop point.
He was
This
close
is
enough
the
to
drop
those
point.
bombers to give real trouble, and I thought he was going to engage me, and I just didn't know whether he was going to head for the bombers or not. He did make one pretty serious, dangerous pass at some of those bomber guys. I headed down hoping he'd follow me down. I wanted to try to bait him away from him, but he changed his mind and went back up against the bombers, so I had to quickly swing back up there, just flogging my engine for all it was worth, pulling hard. This was a stressful turn. I almost blacked out. Came back up, watched him as he took a few long distance, poorly aimed shots at the bombers, and they had released their bombs.
Body parts are flying.
I could hear from radio chatter that they figured they'd hit the target, and I got closer and closer, and finally was able to get a pretty good shot at him.
You must have hit something as he's in secondary
I
explosion.
shot his cockpit out. He was out of the fight, so I decided to go check out the bomb damage, and just took a look at the Hollandia airfield. I could immediately see one big fire and a lot of craters all
Right
over.
where we wanted them.
All over one side of the airfield had just been pulverized, and a lot of smoke, a lot of damage. And I knew that was just the first wave of the bombers. There'd be more bombs coming. I didn't want to be right above the airfield with those bombs falling. So
Secondary explosion.
I dashed out of the way a little bit and just kept looking behind. I could hear a lot of chatter, and I could see some anti-aircraft fire, some aimed at me, mostly aimed up at the bombers, but they must have hit and destroyed about half of the anti-aircraft guns at this point. And as I looked behind me at the airfield, I could see other bombs still hitting, new explosions all the time. It was really impressive to see just how much damage 80 B-24s can do when they unload onto a poorly defended airfield. As time went by, I saw more and more big columns of smoke, and there were parked airplanes down there. They had airplanes all over that airfield, packed wingtip to wingtip, some maneuvering slowly, trying to get off the ground, trying to work their way through the wreckage, but they just got pulverized. Every time I looked, there were more fires, more damage. It was really something to see. I was glad I was up in the airplane and not down there underneath all those bombs. I decided to make a high-speed pass, and I looked down and realized, I'd been flying without arming my cannon. All this time, I'd been using just machine guns only, so I had cannon and decided to make a strafing run against some of those parked airplanes down there on the ground. And as I looked behind me, I could see that other guys flying P-38s had the same idea. And so several of us made some high-speed dashes over the airfield, and more explosions. Even now, more bombs falling. I could see additional fires, lots of airplanes, and P-38s headed in along with me, having the same idea that I had, and let's get these guys while they're on the ground so they don't get us later. I came in at high speed. Along the edge of the airfield, I wanted to line myself with a long line of bombers and fighters I could see parked down there, and so line up was a little complicated, and I didn't want to come in straight in either. And I could see my buddies had the same idea. We wanted to line up. The idea is to pick a long, straight line of parked airplanes and just cut them to pieces with
Bomber leader
cannons.
to little friends, we are headed home.
Nice to get the radio call that the bombers were out of there. I really felt like they'd all made it. I didn't think I never saw any bombers falling. I sure did see a tremendous grid of explosions and holes and craters all over the runways, and the entire northeast half of that airfield was just obliterated. Made a pass and shut up. Got 4 parked airplanes in one pass. Still had some cannon left, decided to risk another one. I took a couple of shots, minor damage from the anti-aircraft fire there, but checking my P-38, nothing vital had been hit. So I decided to make one more pass. I could see bombs exploding in the jungle. Still, our bombers still hitting them there. It's kind of a dangerous area to be making strafing runs, but the adrenaline was really up. We all wanted a piece of these guys because we knew what would happen if they were ready to attack us. Made another pass, lined up on 4 fighters, got them all, and then 4 bombers. took some hits from flying debris and flak, but got out of there. Then I got a little too aggressive with an aileron roll. I made a victory roll and just about blacked or redded myself out by pulling too hard. It was a very exciting time. Things were winding down. About this time, Cy Homer got a victory over a Tony, shot one down and got credit for damaging another one. Ken Ladd helped him damage that. This was Homer's 9th victory, so he was a double ace at this point. Looking behind me, I could see the airfield was finished and we weren't going to be chased by anybody today, so I aimed the nose of my big P-38 away from that anti-aircraft fire and headed for home. You know, these fights are funny. You can be surrounded by enemy aircraft and fighters and parachutes 1 minute and then look around and everybody's gone. And that's what happened to me at this point. I couldn't find anybody. So I got up my map and using dead reckoning, I just vectored my flight path right back onto where I wanted to be. Put the nose up, put the airplane into climb and headed for home. 150 miles later, the next phase was just landing. I was following behind a group of P-38s that I did encounter on the way home, but that was really all I could see as I approached the airfield. Looking all around me, everything was clear. Obviously the Japanese just had no spirit for fighting us. They had been cut to pieces and were back home licking their wounds. We were feeling good. I made a pass through my buddies, and I could see that some of those guys had kept their drop tanks on the whole time. I guess they hadn't really found any action. But of course I had, and most of the guys in my squadron had really seen a lot of activity. I decided to loop back and see if I could spot the bombers, and I turned back. I'd confirmed I was on the path that we had planned to take, so I headed back in the distance toward Hollandia. I still had plenty of fuel, and my airplane was cruising along fine when I did see these beautiful deltas of B-24 bombers in the distance headed for me, just perfectly formed up. I saw one group, then another, and a third, eventually 5 of these beautiful, perfect formations of gleaming, just beautiful B-24 bombers headed in as if to just give us a salute and a thank you for a job well done. They were really pretty things to see. As I passed that last group, I worked on wing over and decided to drop past those guys close enough to hear their engines roaring. And then I was able to just weave my way through their formations back toward our base. Land with just really high spirits. It's interesting how loud a group of 6 B-24s is. That's 24 of those big air-cooled engines. And even though my own engine was plenty loud, I could hear them as I got close. I got close enough I could almost look in the windows and see the guys' faces. It was really nice to see no holes in their formation, every plane in place, and knowing that we had been a part of protecting them from the Japanese defenders there at Hollandia. Because I'd taken some battle damage, I decided to make a straight-in approach, and I was graciously given permission to do that. Everybody else was scheduled to do a full military approach with all their vectors, but I chopped my throttles, went into idle, got closer to the airfield and started popping flaps. Of course, every time I popped flaps, my nose came up, so I had to drop some nose trim. When my speed dropped low enough, I got full flaps and then dropped my landing gear. I could see it coming down by looking at the shiny spot on the side of the engines where the crew chief had polished a mirror, and it was comforting to know that my gear was down. And I lined up on the airfield and came straight on in. It's It's really great to see the difference between our healthy, undamaged airfield surrounded by powerful aircraft and a growing fleet of strike aircraft versus the flaming wreck we had left back at Hollandia, where the Japanese were licking their wounds and would never really be able to recover and come after us. So I landed without a lot of ceremony, turned my airplane back over to my crew chief, thanked him for his work, and gave myself the rest of the day off. All my buddies survived. In the end, we had 7 confirmed air-to-air victories, and we figured we destroyed 50 or more aircraft on the ground. Didn't lose any P-38s. It was a fantastic mission that set us up for the next several missions against Hollandia, the end game over New Guinea.